Salam alaikum. How are you? Well, good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Please confirm that you can hear me. The sound is well. So at least, hi. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Fatima. English Suite. Thank you. Hi. Hope you're doing well. So please, do you hear me well? Is the sound good? The quality of it, everything? Miss Salima. Hi. Salam alaikum. Okay, good, lovely. This is fantastic. I hope all you're doing well. Thank you so much for being here. It really makes me so happy to see this. Well, we can say that our community is growing, and this is something so really good. I do appreciate all the support from you. Okay, so we wait for the others. Please share it to groups, those who re are revising for the exams, because some students told me that even those they are in the BA or even master studies, and the videos are going to help them greatly. It's not only for those who are preparing for the PhD. At the end, just PhD, just an exam. I mean, there is no different from any other exam. It's just the scale of the exam. That's it. Explain guide us how to write an interactive essay. Yeah, I'm going to kind of save this message, so I'm going to go back to it. Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, I know that we all students, even my students have exam next week, and I was planning to publish videos concerning that, but I don't know. It's all about time. Time is a really problem. But today, at least this night, we try to speak about one of the problems that you are facing. We try to help you. Okay, Salam alaikum. Please, would you answer my question? What is your question? Can you please state it or write it here again, Mr. Adnan? Mr. Adnan, please. Okay, Bismillah. So let's start. Someone has put the question, would you please explain or guide us how to write attractive essay? We will talk. In fact, everything I'm going to say today is about attractive essay, how you make your introduction or your essay in a very good way. Okay, so we have difference between didactics and applied didactics. Okay, that's something new. Each time I see the word applied attached to another word, that's a problem. Have methodology exams, and inshallah, I have a couple of questions concerning. Can you? Yeah, I will have, of course. Just ask them to deal with written expression. Okay, so Bismillah. As you can see, I'm seeing a lot of question here, so I'll try to go one by one. So, the one who asked concerning attractive essay, you see that everything I'm going to say here today, you try to put all that, and all the statements I'm going to say concerning my remarks, the accumulation of all of them, that's going to result in a very good or attractive essay. This is one. So let's go back to the beginning and say, please, videos, research methodology. Yes, research methodology, I'm going to post other videos. Now, the difference between didactics and applied didactics, I'm not quite sure because I have never dealt with the idea of applied didactics, but the word didactics, we know it. So we can dig into that and see what do we have. To deal with written expression, ask about the use of they instead of he or she. No. I would say that always we should avoid pronouns. Myself, I tell my students pronouns should be avoided. Sometimes, yes, for example, when we write, let's say, for example, the researcher has to select a topic that is important to the community in which he or she, for example, this case, I'm referring to the researcher, he or she. But even that, only this case sometimes is quite acceptable. But when you start playing with they and we, now we will have a problem. I would myself try to avoid them as much as I can because usually they really degrade the quality of your writing. So this is something you should really do. We have successive essays since the majority of candidates share data. How can we write successive essay? What do you mean? I didn't get you, Ms. Saida. What do you mean by successive essay since the majority of candidates share data? How? What do you mean? Can I use quotation in the parts? Okay, I have once talked about the quotation. I said avoid quotations. at the level of introduction. Sometimes they are good if you have a very good, nice quotation, but should be like very short one. I mean, seriously, a short one. And it's like that, it has the relation to the topic. Don't play with quotation because sometimes you see some students, they try to, I don't know, to reveal or to show that they are super smart and they have read a lot, and they use a quotation that is sometimes out of the topic. So it's kind of they kill themselves. It's like they suicide from the beginning. So no, I would prefer play it safe unless you have a very good quotation. You can use it at the level of introduction. And if you ask me, I would say paraphrase it and put a reference there, and it would be much better. If you paraphrase it and you put a reference, that would be much better than you give us that quotation. Anything about teaching strategies? Hello, sir. So let me check. Maybe I'm missing questions here. Okay. Can I write? Okay, we have importance of critical thinking. Also, anything about teaching strategies? Thank you. Look, one of the things that's and specifically I want to talk about this point. Many questions I really am asked here on my page. It's like when I'm trying to help, I find that the student is really hardwired to one particular answer. It's like, for example, if the student is asked about language learning, it's like he has or she has to talk about approaches directly. If he is, like, for example, asks about didactics, he refers to specific points. No, I want you as a student, you have to remember that you should use your brain in a way, not only your brain, use you that creativity. You have to show that you are not someone who just memorizing some pieces of information from there, and at the day of the exam you are going to repeat them. No, you try to put everything in a way that is going to sound logical, because sometimes I get some criticism from some people. They tell me, no, this is not the correct answer. Yes, I can agree with them to some extent, but I tell them, okay, can you share with me your answer at least so I can. Then I see that he or she just criticizing just because they think the answer is going to be that way. But I say, no, this is my logic. Unless my logic is not sound, the logic itself is not good, then only then you have a problem. Because sometimes some student, they can provide you with a very good answer that is not far from the question. They have a very good logic to the answer. And you respect that, and you may like it, even especially if it is linked, or if it is also done with a very good language. So you should put this into perspective. Okay. You should avoid mentioning pronouns. Yeah, this is what I said all the time. What does appear and word hypothesis and culture mean? Didn't get it. Well, it's not my area of expertise, but as far as I remember, it's we say that language shaped the way we think. I think this is the gist of the hypothesis. So if it's I'm not mistaken, if I'm mistaken, please tell me in the comment that I'm wrong. It's the language shaped the way we think. So if it's we talk about language and shaping the way we think, of course, culture is somehow always related to culture, either part of it or sometimes they say it's inseparable from culture. So the idea of language and culture and the way we think are all together. So if you are confused, just remember that language changes the way we think. This is something. Say we say language shapes our thinking. So if language shapes our thinking and language is related to culture, means that also culture is shaping the way we think. So I wanted to put this into consideration. This is shortly what I can say to you. Okay. Let's see. عندنا رانيا, to what extent can life skills enhance the quality of learning? شوفوا معايا أنا هذه life skills, 21st century skills, if you can see they are all related. The idea of 21st century skills means that these skills are related directly to improving our life. As I said in my video, 21st century skills are a way of thinking. So if you say life skill, and if I have understood you the way you mean it, means it's the same thing. If you are ever asked about it, you just go and dig the same essays I have shared in my last video and see that's how this 21st century skills change the way we think. So we are going to be we or we We care more about problem solving. We care about critical thinking, collaboration, etc. And these the same thing that we need in our life. So it's quite the same thing. And here I want to enhance to emphasize something. Questions sometimes that are really really similar. For example, if someone is going to ask me that learning theories now are not very successful in yielding students who can communicate or they can deal with problems, I can directly relate to the 21st century skills. So if I'm asked about 21st century skills, of course I'm going to answer about them. So you sometimes you have the same information, and that information can be used in different contexts. Maybe sometimes you just change few words and you are good to go. Okay, let's say, uh, good evening. Please, could you provide us with methodology of the answer, introduction, body, conclusion? I have one set. We have Orchidia. The answer is quite simple. I said the introduction and should listen carefully here. The introduction always starts with a sentence that reflects the importance of the field or the scope. If I'm going to talk about 21st century skills, and I'm asked about that, I can start either that learning is so important in our lives, in improving our lives. That's one. I can start by that the 21st century, or that there is a change in life in all aspects, and learning is also, and learning, teaching and learning should be also considered in that change. I can start, for example, if it's case methodology. Methodology is super easy because always that sentence that research methodology is about yielding reliable, proven data, or maybe reliable, objectively proven data. You start with this. Wherever you want to talk about anything, let's say, for example, you want to talk about ethicality, you can start with that. That research methodology is about yielding proven reliable data. And thus it's important to consider ethicality in this process. Then the second sentence directly you start answering. I usually tell my students the first sentence is general. The second sentence is going to be a little bit specific, more specific. The third sentence should be the answer. Sometimes it's much better in the second sentence you provide the answer. Go check my videos. Again, you will find that I always start with the general sentence, then I go directly to the question. Why is that? I tell them because you don't want the one who is examining you to lose, to feel bored. I want to always remember, especially if any exam, a teacher, whether university or PhD, we have usually so many papers to correct, and meaning that I want to see the answer as fast as possible. I want to see the answer. I want to be impressed from the beginning. Otherwise, trust me, you will lose that impression, and you don't want to do that. You want to start directly with the answer, especially from the second sentence. You provide a thesis statement with a very clear answer, with a clear answer and an outline, of course, as I said, implicit outline there. And of course, you are going to develop these elements. For example, if are going, you have certain points. Last time, for example, I have shared an introduction concerning 21st century skills. We talked about it. For example, if we're going to talk about collaboration, critical thinking, we talk about problem solving. These the way you mentioned them in the same order you have mentioned them, you have to develop also. You have to develop your the development. Okay, I need more shares because I don't see people sharing, so I need a lot of shares. So, okay, do we choose to write eclectically in our essay or not? I didn't get the question, Mr. Adnan. Can you please uh, reformulate it or tell me what do you mean exactly? How to avoid the repetition of a particular word addressing a person? Usually, why do you need to address a person? I find it weird when you tell me I want to address a person. We usually either talk about persons, either teachers, we talk about practitioners, we talk about instructors. These words, we use them when it comes to teachers. So I play with them, either the role of the teacher, the role of the instructor. That's it. So I don't like, or the role of the practitioners. For example, practitioners in an ESP field, teachers of an ESP. So this is how I use them. I don't want you to use he or she. I don't want you even to address this person. Please share. Please. Okay. I think the heads of the project were once brilliant answers related to the students' artistry in dealing with the subject. Memorizing doesn't take anywhere because the data is uh, exactly. Cookie here, or he brought a very important idea. The problem that data is everywhere, and I'm quite sure there are some people who have already memorized a lot of essays. The problem is, unless you are very creative, and this creativity usually at the level of introduction, how you put all the elements together, it's kind of that logic. Your logic, in fact, is going to stand at the level of introduction. It shows there that you really have understood the answer. Go check my last video and see how some of the introductions failed to convey the real answer to the question, and how one of the introduction was very amazing. In fact, it was really good that I really liked it so much because the person there really showed that he has understood the answer and all the elements are there. Okay, sir, concerning reference, whenever we cite secondary quote from a primary source, should we write the secondary source on our reference? If you are talking, let me read it again. Concerning reference, whenever we cite secondary quote from our primary source. Okay, sometimes when it comes to dissertation, when writing memoir كما نقولوا, I check if I have only a secondary source. For example, I have a quotation, and that quotation is referring to primary source. Alhamdulillah, now like we do have internet and everything. If I'm quite sure that the primary source is there, maybe I'm going to find it in Google Book. Even if I don't have the book, I try to go back to the primary source because usually we need the primary source, not the secondary one, especially with quotation. Unless you can't find it anywhere and you are not sure if it's really true or not. At that time, it's only safe to use the secondary source who mentioned the quotation. By this, in fact, you are avoiding all responsibility. If, in case, for example, that quotation is wrong, you would say, no, it's not my mistake. I just got it from this book. That will be someone else's mistake at this time. Okay. Adna Shifa, she said, but learning theories promote in involving 21st century. I don't get it. You started your question with but learning theories promote in involving 21st century skills. Can you clarify? What is the question, or is it a statement, or what is it? What are some teaching strategies you use? I mean, I use. Well, let's be clear. I teach at university level means that the strategies I use are so different from the strategies I used to utilize when I was a teacher at middle school. Middle school, usually because we deal with basic skills most of the time, so we have reading, writing. So we were instructed, in fact, to use competency-based approach, we use project-based approach. But with university is quite different. It's really different. I'm a lecturer. In a lecturer, it's more of a teacher-based kind of a classroom. So I'm the one who teaches to speak, but in the same time, I am taking into consideration that now information is everywhere. Students, they don't need me just to get information. So why students need me? Just maybe to enhance their critical thinking, to make them see better how all elements are related. This is what is missing in our classes. Students don't need information really. They need to understand how they can put them all together. They need to know how to write, how to be so convincing. Something that is missing a lot is the rhetoric of writing itself. It's really missing. It's like we teach students everything, but we don't teach them exactly how to write. I said this before. It's like we teach them mechanics of writing and everything about writing and not writing itself. And this is kind of a problematic. And there is something else that's so important. A teacher has to really talk about motivation and motivating students. Today's students need a lot of motivation, especially with the problems in economic and employment, etc., etc. You know everything. What kind of question can we have about cognition? Cognition, when it comes to cognition, it simply have to understand that the processes that happen in the mind. And when it comes to processes happen in the mind, the first thing you need to know how language processes, how the mind processes language. This is a bit advanced, but you need to um prepare some essays concerning that. You have to read about the role of short-term memory and long-term memory. You need to talk about there is what called the schema theory and how the mind, as I said, processes everything, stores information. That's the process of the process of saving, or they call it, I don't, saving and retrieving also information. And when it comes to language learning, the talk about psychological affective factors also is part of the cognition. So all these questions can be part of it. How you have to study it is quite simple. First, study behaviorism, because behaviorism neglects everything concerning what happened in the mind. Then there is directly the cognition side, those who talked about what happened in the mind. And even those were very criticized because they forget the what's happening outside. And so we have included the social factors that we call the social learning theories. These are so important, yeah, especially for those who are sitting for applied linguistic. You have to study that. Okay, I still don't see people sharing. I told you, share, share. Okay, good evening, sir. What kind of question? Okay, talked about this. Is this live only about didactics and EFL? Well, of course, you are free to talk, to ask any question if it comes to teaching, learning, enhancing students. You are so free, Miss Ikram. Okay, from the more general to the more specific. Ananya, I didn't get it. Okay, can we mention a definition? Usually, Miss Saida, we always mention a definition, but usually we don't say it. For example, the definition of ESP is often said the ESP, or the ESP focuses on the idea of learner's need. I mean, it's kind of the definition, but we don't want you to say that the definition of ESP is that. For example, let me Google. Let me Google said, what is ESP? Let's see the definition here on the internet. Said, okay, where is it? Okay, English for specific. Let me try to find a definition. I'm going to tell you. So it usually refers to teaching English language to university student people. No, no. Okay, with reference to particular vocabulary and skills they need. Okay, this is ESP is defined to meet psychological needs. Okay, so if I want to define an ESP and I want to focus, maybe sometimes I want to focus on needs analysis. So I start like this. Say, for example, needs analysis is an important criterion when it comes to an important criterion in an ESP course. This is the beginning. This sentence, although it doesn't seem like a definition, but it is a definition. This is how we use it. For example, methodology. I want to start, for example, if the question is about assessment, I'm going to ask you a question, no, sorry, about, um, let's say, for example, data collection tools. I'm going to say, for example, in research methodology, data collection tool is important, is very important in the process of process of, sorry, let me rephrase my mind. So we said data collection tool is an important step in research methodology. So this it's kind of give kind of definition of what is a data collection tool with respect to research methodology. So we do that, but always implicitly. Okay, thesis, please. Again, I lost connection. I can mention definition. Can we? Okay, talked about this. I always face problem concerning the introduction. How can I attract the reader's attention? How can I mention what I'm going to write in an organized way? So, Rania, I'm going to tell you something. Usually, if you have a very good idea about what you are going to do, it's like you have a very solid idea of the element you are going to talk about. أنا راح نمشي نفوت دركا ماشي نفوت في الميثودولوجي. سقسوني مثلا على مثلا steps in research methodology. If I know them, like, and I have grasped the idea of these steps, trust me, you will write a good introduction because the introduction is going to reflect those steps. بصح المشكلة احنا مرات ما ديجا ماكش فاهم كاع الموضوع and you want to write an introduction. That's why you find yourself lost. Okay, the topic we are talking about questions if you are university students, Miss Amira, about or anything we are discussing, especially for those who are going to sit for the PhD exam. Okay, let's say, are we, sorry, we have, sorry, are we supposed to mention the problematic and the hypothesis in the introduction? What do you mean exactly? What do you mean? If usually I always say this and I will repeat it again. At the level of introduction, you need to answer the question. You don't want to give the examiner another question. No, answer the question. You don't need to waste your time. About difference between communicative approaches and 21st century skills. شوف نعاودوا نرجعوا للديداكتيك. The idea of communicative approaches is not new. It's old. لما كان تروحوا ترجعوا, you will find that we talk about communicative approaches in the 70s. So it's not something new. So when you write something that new approaches, these are old approaches. These approaches, they emphasize what? They want the students to communicate. Simply put, we want students who can use effectively the language. True communication. صح معليش. بصح today حتى كي تخرج من الجامعة راك بدك تتخرج من الجامعة you have studied with communicative approaches and you can communicate but is it enough? In today's world it's not enough. Even if you have this communication, you have the basic skills. I said last time, for example, in my introduction, I said communicative approaches, they were very successful in teaching us the skills, teaching us communicative competencies, and teaching us the subject matter. But all these are not enough because you have them. But what are you going to do with them? Now we have something else. We have what we call we have 21st century skills that use this information, what you have learned, to solve a problem. What kind of problem are we talking? It's something that is going either to secure a job for you, and it's not only a job, you need something that is at a global scale, for example. For example, today we are not talking about teachers just in the classroom and maybe are going to be recruited by the school. Now you can, for example, open your own online school and you start solving problems to people not even in your country. This is something you can do. You can translate documents, for example, online. You can teach, you can do whatever. So the knowledge you have now, it's not only are just you have that. No, you are using it to solve a problem. In fact, this is why we have critical thinking, means you have to think outside the box, sorry. You have work, we have collaboration. We no more talk about one single individual, but we need to work together. So this is 21st century skills. It's simply, if you are lost, go back to my last video. I talked about 21st century skill and I said why communicative approaches are not enough now. And we need we need to amend this by adding 21st century skills to school curriculum. Maybe, for example, if you are asked about the curriculum itself and how the curriculum is important, you can add also these. Okay. Can we express thesis statement indirectly? هي شوف كاين واحد المشكل دائما الجماعه يقول لي ورا thesis statement لما شاف thesis statement خلاص يهبل. Sometimes thesis statement it can be one sentence. Sometimes it can be two sentences. Can be three sentences. انا نعطيكم the way I write. انا كل جمله نكتبها كل جمله نكتب مثلا كان نبدا بالجمله نقول لك مثلا in today's world, communicative approaches alone are not enough. كان نبدأ بهذه الجملة I'm going to develop it. إذا كملت موراها the need for skills that cope with today's world is important. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to develop it. If I'm going to say, for example, 21st century skills constitute of collaboration, كل واحدة فيهم, I'm going to develop it. So literally, the introduction, I develop every sentence in my introduction. By this, I really make sure, and I want you to take note of it. I make sure that I didn't write anything just for the sake of writing. ما كتبتش حاجة blah blah. I wrote it so it's going to be beneficial for me or the reader, and I'm going to develop it later. Okay. Can you please talk about difference between communicative? I just did. I just did. Is it okay to write using simple words? I'm not fond of the complex, and unfortunately I can't memorize. I have said, Miss Iman, I just last time I said that I do consider my style very simple. It's not the problem of words, it's often the problem of coherence. If you have a very good logic in your writing style, trust me, doesn't matter if you have very simple. But again, this is a competition. If someone is writing better logic, better words, so don't don't say I should win because at the end this is a competition and a fierce one. So maybe what you should do, write simple essays with simple sentences, with simple words. Then at the end, after you finish, try to enhance it. For example, I give you a small example. راني نكتب أنا مثلا نكتب لي مثلا قال مثلا the change in today's word resulted in a change also in the teaching learning process. خلاص resulted. نجي نقرا نحوس على synonyms جوجل دير synonyms تلقى مثلا resulted مثلا عندها ramification, repercussions, consequences. تلقى بعض الكلمات نجم تموديفاي. This is the simplest way to try to modify or to make your style really looks nice. Okay. Can you do another post when it's asked to write introduction, but this time, okay, let me check. What I lost it. I really, okay, I don't know why I lost the questions. Okay, in an essay, some students use questions in their piece of writing, mainly argument essays, sometimes using question they feel they need. Myself, I try to run away from question. يعني دايما مس كريمة نهرب من الأسئلة، نحاول نمد منها، نمد أنا الإجابات. هاك شغل مثلا نمد الاجابه مثلا كي تقرا introduction تلقاها فيها كلش then argument counter argument تلقاها منها مثلا if I'm talking about the role of the teacher قال مثلا yeah indeed the role of the teacher in today's world has to be a facilitator a guide etc etc however without the cooperation of learners in communicative approach in a communicative based in a class such class is going to be problematic or is going to constitute is going to result in issues with teachers, so teachers have to revert back to center of the class. So it's kind the answer is all there. Okay, can you talk about learning styles and learning strategies and the difference between them? I don't have a very concrete idea, but simply learning style, you are going to mind the styles of your learners. Today, if you want to write an essay today, you need always to kind of focus on learners because you have to remember that everything we do now is learner centered. So we focus on styles that are going suitable for your learners. Of course, if you have different learners, you have to mind we have to vary between different styles at this by this at least you make sure that you have all the students with you. Strategies is simply we are talking about techniques. Usually the word strategies used synonymously with techniques, the way you do activities, the way you engage with your students, with the way you manage your class. These are strategies. It depends also what kind of question are we asking specifically. Okay, I need a lot of shares. I need a lot of shares. You refer to them only by third person if needed. Okay. When we have a question about behaviorism, can we mention motivation? Because it has relation with stimuli and response. Okay. If you are asked about behaviorism, of course it was tackling the idea of motivation. Always make we have to remember that when we talked about motivation, or at least when behaviorism was the only theory we have, because we didn't know what's happening inside the mind. There were no theories. You have to remember this. It's only after Chomsky comes and said, no, it can't be. We have something that happens in the mind that things started to change. Don't blame them as if زعما كيما شغل ما مشى هنا راهم هنا وكانوا neglecting. No, we didn't know. The time with the advancement of science, we started to know what's happening inside the mind. So yes, you can talk about motivation and you talk about what's the problem with that motivation. Is it good or is it bad? Okay. Sir, what is your piece of advice of students who feel overwhelmed either because of the extensive preparation or pressure? Miss Cookie or Mr. Cookie. The problem, I don't want to be so pessimist when it comes to this. You will feel the pressure because this exam is kind of this is going to determine your life. If you win, that's a big change. If you don't win, that's a big hit to you, especially if you have been revising. If even those who are not revising, they will feel it. The moment you see people winning, you will feel it. So some pressure is good for you to keep up with the work, but at the end, it's not beneficial. What you should do is really write. As I tell my students, write a lot of essays. And by this, you are working on your language, working on your style. ما نكذبش عليك، انا تدوخني كي يجيني ايتيديون يقول لي راني راجع، نقول له شحال كتبت من اساي، يقول لي ما كتبت والو. تجيني بيزار ما، ونقول له كيفاش، يقول لي منا. Usually those, they rarely win. I tell you the truth, they rarely. If they do, they suffer also because at the end, it's all about writing style. So my piece of advice, write. وهذه نصيحة ليكم دركا، باش حتى كان تعرفوا واحد بريميراني ولا دوزياماني ولا ماستر. Trust me, from now work on your writing style. ما تستناش، مش تستنى لا لا قال الكونكور عنده شهر I want to work on writing. It's not enough usually. Even those who have started now, you try to revise now, and this revision should not stop you. If you're really so determined that you want to win, you should not stop. You should work on your level. Okay. Um, if the question is about assessment, are we supposed to talk about approaches and methods? Of course. شوف في الديداكتيك everything is connected. مثلا مش عارف طبيعة السؤال اللي راح يسقسوا لكم هنا على assessment. بصح assessment is going to, when you say assessment, is going to assess learning, what are called learning objectives or teaching objectives. معنى عندك الobjective, these are related. L'objective وين نحطهم? They are at the level of the approach usually, because if my approach is communicative in nature, mean that when I assess, I'm going to assess something relating with the communication. تروح مثلا نعطيك مثلا، نفرض السؤال درك يجوك يقول لك مثلا اهضر على assessment, how assessment has developed with teaching approaches. هاي نمدوها مثلا example. كي تروح للجرامر translation method، وش كانت assessment؟ It's going to reflect the same tenet of the method. The method says that we want you to write accurately, means that I'm going to assess is I'm going to assess your writing style, that it should be accurate. لا كي نروح مثلا the direct method emphasizes speaking skill with total neglection of writing skill. Means they are going just to emphasize what are you saying, how do you speak, with repetition, etc. Take it to the communicative approaches. Communicative approaches is about the balance. So we need you to acquire the four skills, and you will be fluent speaker and of course and also a writer. So assessment should cover all that. One of the problems that now we criticize assessments اللي راح يكتب على assessment احنا دركا نروح نقررهم نقول له we emphasize oral written، بس على فكرة نشوف الامتحان نديرو غير written exam. So at the end it's what are the other skills. درك علاه ولا يخرجوا لنا مثلا قال لا دوك عندك مثلا كيما هذا التقويم المستمر وهذه الحوايج. جماعه اللي تبغي تمد مثال، التقويم المستمر ينفعك because you are going to give chance to some students you assist other skills. Okay. عندنا. Hi, I have a question concerning the PhD essay. When we paraphrase, should we mention the name of scholar and the date of the publishing? I mean, mention the scholar. شوف هي, the more you reference, trust me, it's a really good thing. If you are going to provide a very interesting piece of information and you provide a kind of citation there, it means that you are really well educated and you have read. And it's going to be a plus, trust me. This is Miss Angela. and yeah, Angela. So this is something. So uh, you can do it. Myself, I didn't do it, but I think it's something that it would have been good. So and of course now since you are competing with a huge number of students, anything you do that's going to make your paper stand, I think you should go with that. For those sitting in the exam for applied linguistics, shall we revise everything related to linguistics too? Miss إيمان. شوف أنا كي نسمع applied linguistics تضحك من الخلعة. مشكلة applied linguistics is really broad. It's like so many topics. أصلا تعريفها أصلا is so broad. It's like when you say language related problem. Oh, it can be everything. So when it comes to applied linguistics, usually انا دائما نشوف البروجرام تاع كيما احنا نقولوا السيلبس when it comes to teach at university, often they emphasize first language teaching, first language acquisition theories, second language learning theories. Usually they focus about the scope of applied linguistics, how applied linguistics can help, but still you go equipped with all this, and especially of how how applied linguistics solve problems. And maybe if you are maybe is going to be asked about a question, let's say for example they are going to ask you about the use of English primary school, you're just going to use some pieces of information there and there, and you construct a very good essay. Okay, can you explain the theoretical background of teaching form versus teaching content? This is a debate. So the moment if you are asked about this, you will say that there was a debate. There was. Now we don't have that debate anymore between the form and content. But still, some people they say if you focus on content, you lose the form, and if you focus on the form, you lose content. And if we are talking about communicative approaches, you have to remember this. We need balance. We need to balance between the two. And when you balance between the two, there is an idea that sometimes you can be asked about. That should we teach the form explicitly or implicitly? And in this regard, often some archaic teachers, they still think that we should teach it implicitly. But no. Communicative approaches, in fact, they support the idea of teaching explicitly and implicitly, so that there should be balance between content and form. The simple way of doing this, usually we say they should be related. For example, one of the things you have studied, you start with the lecture, with the course, with the lesson. The lesson is, let's say, for example, about reading or speaking. The same content or the same form that is used in this skills is going to be deployed in teaching you grammar related to context. So always there's a relation to the context. Always remember this. باش تهرب من المشاكل قال you teach it even explicitly, but it's always related to a context. مش عارف هديك please وش هي. Okay. Is the idea of ethics in research related to plagiarism? It's it's one aspect in plagiarism. Ethics in research methodology, it can be in all aspects. إذا بديتيها من research problem يقول لك احنا عادة the problem should serve the community. If the problem is not serving the community, it means, or maybe is going to harm the community, this is unethical. This is one. And number two, if research problems are provocative and they're going to create problems, they are not ethical. خاطر احنا دائما نقراو مثلا واحدة من characteristics of research questions, they should be ethical. This is two. تروحي مثلا تاني عندنا data collection tools. You have to make sure that the way you are going to collect data is going to be ethical. For example, if there are permissions to be granted, consent, if the data is going to be recorded and have to be saved, all this. And then of course when it comes to research report writing, you have to be honest in writing, in honest in reporting on the information, otherwise everything is going to be unethical. Plagiarism هذيك في الأخير برك تجي تكتب for example when you are doing references, you have to be honest. ودرك على بالكم باللي خلينا نفتح موضوع بالك شويه جديد عليكم وراح ندير فيديو عليه دوك، على بالكم باللي رانا دخلنا الاي اي. والاي اي يعني artificial intelligence. مش عارف يا جماعه سمعتوا بالتشات جي بي تي. تشات جي بي تي هذا راه داير ضجه، بون في الجيريا ممنوع، بات الوالا جربناها هكا شويه. تشات جي بي تي نجم يكتب لك ميموار، يعني يكتب لك ميموار، وصراحة it's going to be not original، يغلط شوي بصح it is going to write you a dissertation. It's original. It's like even if I'm going to use a plagiarism checker, I'm not going to find it. So what about it? Is it ethical? This is one of the trendy subjects, by the way. وراح ندير عليها separate video concerning this AI. بس أتوقع maybe they're going to ask you about this. Okay. Can can we say that the introduction is a summary? Yeah, it is a summary. It's مش a summary. It's the answer. It's kind of short answer. The shortest answer Miss فلوريدا. يعني النيشان. ديجا دي دايما نأكد عليها. مد الإجابة تما ومن بعد يسموهم بعد هذوك development. You're developing the answer. Okay, I think maybe this is so. Be careful. Always say the introduction is the answer. ارجعي فيريفي كاع اللي فيديو اللي درتهم راح تلقي في الانترودكشن حطيت الانسر. I gave the answer. فهمنا؟ Okay. Okay. Can we start the hook? Who the hook is any sentence. بس أعطيني what kind of hook are we talking about؟ أنا قلت لك كاين جماعة مثلا تقول له hook يهضر لك على القطب الشمالي وراه يهضر على الديداكتيك. It feels out of topic. Eclectically means selecting what appears to be the best in various methods or styles and writing essays better than other way. شوفي مستر عدنان أنا كاينة حاجة أنا when I write I don't really think about this. When I write, I have the answer in front of me. I'm going to give Kane someone. A student asks me, someone asked me about a question. Let me check it. تكون نشوف السؤال هنا. Okay. كاينة وحدة بعتت لي sport. There is the other question. Where is it? Oh, line math. Where am I? Okay. There is the question. How does the teacher feedback following students' errors affect their motivation to learn a foreign language؟ هنا it talks about error. كي تجي تشوف مثلا هذا السؤال تلقى فيه بزاف حوايج. أنا الآن أول حاجة خصني نفكر how can I what are the elements there and how can I put them all together. نلقى عندي teachers feedback، نلقى عندي students error، نلقى عندي motivation، وعندنا learning foreign language. نلقى هادو أربعة. درك انا هاي بعثته لي قبيله نشوف مثلا كيفاش ندخل الكيستيون نشوف الكي ووردز مثلا تبدا بتيتشرز فيدباك مثلا قال مثلا قال teachers feedback is an important aspect in the in a learning language learning class قادر قال مثلا قال students error in a learning class are unavoidable هذه دخلت عندي تروح الموتيفيشن قال to learn foreign language مثلا قال مثلا مثلا عندنا to learn foreign language هنا قادر نروح ندخل بالفورين لانجويج نمشي مع كوتي foreign language قال مثلا in foreign language teach yeah teachers feedback and students لا no not that let me think a bit دخلنا من learning a foreign language I go for example قال it's important again in a language learning class it's under the well the process of language learning هنا خصني كلمة I'm gonna take it's unavoidable to have students error so this way maybe I'm going to reformulate later صح اللي اللي نمدها هنايا how can I approach this question وش من باب ندخل قلنا تدخل من teachers feedback ولا تدخل من students errors ولا تدخل من motivation مثلا هنا كاين motivation نسيتها قاعد تدخل motivation قال مثلا motivation is an important factor when it comes to learning a foreign language. In this regard, it's the responsibility is primarily the responsibility of the teacher to ensure that learners are motivated. And one of the issues that affect the letter is the feedback, especially in relation to students' error. هاي درك بداو يخرجوا شوية أفكار. هذيك تفكر كيما هكذا تولي تلقى روحك تكتب اساي once you start هذوك لي بوين اللي تكتبهم you develop them. Okay, methodology is difficult. Trust me, it's not. I'm going to share some videos, inshallah. Okay, I have a question. How can interactive learning be fostered and tested? Could you explain the element that we need to include in this essay? لاحظي معي كلمة interactive learning، راكي قلتي زوج حروف في كلمة interaction. راكي دخلتي الفكرة نتاع خاطر interaction happens between the teacher, the learner، ومن بعد the learner وتاني عندك the learner with the environment. هذا دايما تفكروها. عندك the teacher with learners، هذه باينة، هذه سهلة. عندك interaction between the teacher learner و learner teacher خاطر it's both ways. ومن بعد عندك interaction between the learner and learner because something is so important we need to foster it then. ومن بعد عندك an interaction between the learner and the environment. which came from the environment. Maybe you are going to use technology inside that classroom. So that technology you are going to use, that's also going to constitute an interaction. How can it be tested? هنا تديك the idea because you are not going to talk about summative assessment, you are going to talk about formative assessment, an ongoing assessment that is going to be there with classroom activities. This is, if you have the specific question, maybe we can talk about it. بصح هاد الكيستيون راهي so large. بصح أني كيما بديت لك, this is all the interactive learning. How you can foster it? You have to foster each one I just told you. Can you explain the structure of comparative no Mr. حمزة, جماعة الليتراتور دايما زاعفين مني والله خير. I can't help with that. How can we assess the 21st century skills during learning process inside the classroom? Oh, this is really good question, Miss Mariam. شوفي, it's a really good question to the point that I really don't know the answer. Some I don't know the answer, but I don't have clear idea how can I say it. First thing you have to talk about that implementing 21st century in the class is so difficult. Because as I once told you, 21st centuries usually are there to change the mindset of learners. They are not like skills like reading and no, it's kind of changing the way you think. So we need to incorporate these with what we are teaching already, maybe, but still assessing it's so difficult. So I will pass. Excuse me, Mr. Mariam, but so good question. It's a scary one, but just needs a little bit of revision on that. Can we move from general to specific in writing? You are doing that. Usually you move from general, usually that the first sentence, then you move to specific. Especially for example if كما كنت نحكي دركا مثلا كنا الكيستيون اللي مديتو how does teachers feedback مثلا بديت بموتيفيشن قال motivation is important منا هاني بديت بالجنرال ومن بعد نبدا نهبط شويه قال in this regard it's the responsibility of the teacher to make sure that هذا راني هبطت شويه ومن بعد مثلا قال in particular when it comes to هاني كل مره راني ندخل في الكيستيون تاعي but still I'm always related to that question مش خارج الموضوع. That's your answer also. Okay, عندنا أيوتا. So please, which method fits the teaching of reading skill, ESP and ESP, for those learners who need to read text with technical words in a specific field? Well, when it comes to reading, there is a problem with reading because what we usually do as teachers is kind of focus on to make our learners know everything about reading, but they don't read themselves. So in this, if I'm going to advance my ideas, they are not going to help you. I don't know which field are you talking about precisely. So please, you can text me again and try to explain to me what is the context you are talking about. Okay, how paradigms influence the choice of methodologies? I know the ones the paradigm is determined and appropriate methodology can be chosen. Is there something else should I know about? If I'm talking about research methodology and you're talking about the paradigms and research methodology, if you believe in positivism, means that you really don't want any qualitative interpretation of your data, or you don't want any kind of qualitative data in your research, because you believe that everything in science has to be related to quantitative data. This is going to affect everything because at the end you're going to use what is called maybe an experiment. You are not going to use you will use a survey, but you are not going to use, for example, a questionnaire. You are not even going to involve the human side in your research, because that is going to make your research related to social sciences, and in social sciences, to talk about precision, accuracy is rather difficult. That's why they are avoided when it comes to positivism. But if you go to post positivism, no, you can allow. In post positivism, we say adhering to the scientific way is more important than just the, it's more important. So even if there is no accuracy there because you are dealing with subject, but still just the fact that you are using the scientific method, it's good. So that depends entirely on how, what kind of approach or what kind of paradigm you are talking about. I think in writing essay, we should focus in the form and academic writing, for instance, more than the topic. No, we really know. Paradise, remember, يعني دايما نقولها, this is a competition, like مش تريح مع 500 مثلا ولا, maybe if it's just an exam, it's in university, even a university exam, it's, we need everything, we need the form, we need the style, but كاين فرق في الجامعة. كي تكتب essay to your teacher, نحوسوا على العموم كيفاش نمدوا لك نقطة, بصح when it comes to that, no, it's competition, and only few, not few, so few will win. Okay. Thanks. One. The last year exam of Bangladesh universities and learners teachers. How can we know that is related to behaviorism? I don't know the question. Can you tell me the question? Sometimes the question, yes, sometimes questions are so vague to the point that you don't know what are you talking about. Are you talking about teaching, learning approaches, or are you talking about behaviorism? But of course, this has to do with try to assess all the elements. عندي غيامات كنت نهضر مع أستاذ في هذه القضية. قلت له انت كي يكون عندك تو elements ولا 3 elements محطوطين حدا بعض، قال learning theories منها، راك تفهم من كي يكونوا محطوطين حدا بعض، تعرف مثلا تلقى حاجه مثلا recent subject، وتلقى تحس باللي راك تهضر على behaviorism مباشره. you should think, am I in the right path؟ مرات هكا وحدك تفكر قال am I right path really, am I really answering the question in the correct way. This can be done when you look at all the elements together, otherwise you may deviate from the answer. What about TEFL line taught؟ انا جمع اللي تقولي TEFL didactic pedagogy, they are all kind the same thing, they are mostly the same thing. So just follow my line of thought, I have a video concerning that, and you will be good with that. Sir and Constantine, the main module is discourse analysis and ESP. How would you tackle this title? I will just ask this question. شوف, عندك discourse analysis usually we're talking about analyzing a text. We analyze the text to understand it critically. معناها هذه راها مباشرة تديني مثلا is one of the important skill اللي هي in ESP, because in ESP we give importance to materials we have, because we always talk about the authenticity of the materials. So how can we know they are authentic? And how we want to prepare learners for their future occupation, say, for example. So it's so important if they can use some strategies from this course analysis in ESP. So this is the way I would tackle this idea. I hope that you like it. What are the major problems that applied linguistics can solve? Well, that's the thing. Applied linguistics can solve everything. So anything that is related to language, we put it next to applied linguistics. So if I'm talking about bilingualism, we put it to applied linguistics. If you put discourse analysis, we put it to applied linguistics. The recent implementation of English at primary school, that's problem to applied linguists to solve. So this is why it's so okay. ChatGPT may win. Yeah, ChatGPT is a problem. Alhamdulillah, it's مش alhamdulillah, I don't know. Maybe it is banned here. If it is if it is there, trust me, you can just give it the question and it's going to answer you. And this is something because I'm really interested and I want to talk about it. And everyone is talking about it now. Said, what about students? Because students now are writing essays using AI. I'm using one of the AI because I'm developing my next video and I want to show you the capability of the AI, where it fails and where it shines. Okay, I have one last question, which is if I'm interested in doing research about certain topic based on my experience in teaching, can I relate it to given topic at the day of the exam? شوف, one of the important thing اللي أنا نقولها ونعاودها. Provide examples, and the more your examples are real, more related, trust me, you will succeed. مثلا كيما السؤال اللي مديته مثلا تاع motivation feedback، من قد تهضر على error analysis، تهضر على مثلا mistakes motivation، بصح the moment you are going to give example، هذه الأولى is going to expand your paragraphs. يعني paragraph تزيد معها example. مثلا قال مثلا in the case of Algeria middle school، تحس ديك الله يقرا باللي راك فاهم. It's going to be always a plus to you. Okay. And there, how can we develop an essay about the place of writing in the previous methods and approaches? It's so easy. ابدأ بالgrammar translation method, Miss Milou. ابدأ بالgrammar translation method. Writing was considered like the only skill that's going. So it was reading and writing. ومن بعد اروح للدايركت ميثود which is quite the opposite, no writing at all. ومن بعد اروح للcommunicative approaches, اروح direct to new approaches. We said writing is there as an important as an output, one of the skills that we call productive skills, but still in the same time is not given that the same importance. So it's, we care about accuracy, but we care more about fluency. So you talk about this and you will be safe. Okay, welcome. How paradigms influences the choice? I have just answered this, just did. Interesting, many thanks, always welcome. And everybody here. Okay, peace. Okay, how can implement the different approaches in teaching productive skills writing? I just said it to Mr. الأخضر. Just said it. كي تروح تمشي الجرامر translation تلقاها هي one of the approaches that really focuses on writing. By the way, grammar translation method really succeeded in yielding students who can write. They can really write. Because one of the things now we عندنا في communicative approaches كاع الاساتذه يشكوا منها، يهضروا على communicative approaches بصح راهم عندنا دي زيتيديون ما يكتبوش. عاد ديجا عندنا مشاكل، عندنا في الجامعه ما يعرفش يكتب. sorry to say it. يجيك ما يعرفش يكتب. احنا كنا نقرروا نسمى what is the issue. عليه grammar translation method كي كان تعلموا الحفاظة ومنه كان يكتب. So it must be a problem. So even if you want to criticize it, you should be careful on how you are doing that. Concerning thesis statement, do we start by it or عادة? No, don't start by it unless you are very confident in the way you're speaking. Usually تبدأ بجملة. Tell me أنا قلت كل جملة تقولها it's kind of itself is a kind of a thesis statement because it leads to your answer. It leads to your answer. أنا دايما نقولها كل جملة في الانترودكشن تاعك it should be important. ما كاينش حاجة blah blah. No, it should not be there. So even thesis statement بالك ماهيش باينة هكذا. Everyone is kind of a thesis statement itself, especially when it comes to development. Okay. The place of writing, they were just talked about it. Thank you is post positive the same as constructive. لا 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 لا. لا حول ولا قوة. Miss Judy ابتسام. Positivism or constructivism ولا علاقة. Positivism, it's a paradigm that deals with knowledge itself. يعني المعرفة قاعد. Or constructivism, that's something concerning. Yeah, it's a doctrine itself, but usually we relate it to learning. We really end up the construction of new knowledge. So don't compare them the two, but try to read more about them. Could you explain the relationship between applied linguistics and teaching EFL? I have once talked about it and I said applied linguistics and EFL. أولا applied linguistics كي تهضر عليها دائما تفكر to talk about two terms. Talk about linguistic applied and applied linguistics. تفكروها مليح. Linguistic applied and applied linguistics. Then when it comes to EFL, we want to know, because we are talking about problem-related, language-related problems, and since we teach the language, we are directly influenced by this. Understood? So there is a big there is a big relationship. دروك تبقى عليك إلا تحط لك هذه الكيستيون كيما هكذا so vague. You can talk about anything you want as long as you say, for example, أنا إلا سقسوني هذا راح نهضر نقول باللي the inclusion of linguistics the linguistic aspects from linguistics هذه واحدة. نهضر على the psychological aspects from psychology how they are integrated. نهضر على sociolinguistic aspects that we integrated in EFL. If the question is vague like this. What is the main point tackled in modern language and culture? Bon, language and culture, I always say that you should always focus on the idea. What is culture? How can culture be taught? What are the different approaches to being to using culture? ندخل في ذاك الديبيت تاع should we include the target's culture or the native culture or the target culture? And you should provide essays like this. Ah, okay. Can theory be starting point of research? Can theory be starting point of research? I mean, we always start by kind of theory or hypothesis. I don't get the question here. Okay, I'm starting to get tired, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Should teachers need to be practitioners? How can we tackle the question? شوفي أنا كاين واحدة من الessays in one my video I wrote about this. I really wrote about this. Do we need to be practitioners? Teachers, we are practitioners. We are literally practitioners. Sometimes الكيستيون اللي يجيك are we theoretician؟ اسكو احنا نمدوا النظريات؟ Usually we don't. As teachers, we teach, so it's more of the practice. It's not our job to do too advanced theories. So I don't know if I'm going to need to reformulate the question. To clarify my question, sir, when an ESP teacher wants to emphasize in his course on developing the reading skill of his student, so which method or approach he has to follow? شوف أنا نمشي معك بواحد الكلمة إلا سقسوني وأنا ديجا مانيش عارف وحاب نهرب. نجم نقول لهم باللي إن ال ESP talking about one specific approach is rather difficult because at the end we have learners and we have specific needs that come with these learners. So if your learners need to read carefully, like word by word, they need to follow this approach. If your learners they don't need to read the whole document. They need just to scan it and get pieces of information quickly. They need this way. So it all depends on your learners and their needs. هذه تفكريها كيما هكذا. So that the way they are going to read is going to be dictated by the learners' needs. أنا أني هربت من هذا المشكل. But still, you have to read about it. What are the factors that lead to the shift from the teacher-centeredness to learner-centeredness? Diverse, yes, economic interest more effective, interest in learning autonomy, and more factors. هي كاينة كلمة دائما تقالت هي مس جودي الكلمة اللي تقالت that more teaching doesn't result in more learning means that we should not focus on the teacher, we should focus on learners. Le fait كي تعطي تقول the focus on learners we have a lot of things. قبل مثلا تهضر على مثلا learners autonomy, learners motivations, learners engagement هادو كاع يدخلون all these can be part. مهم كي تقول لي بدأ علاش shift to from teacher centered and learner centered just because simply more teaching doesn't result in more learning. Simply put, you just need to develop this. Mumada's exam, teaching and learning English as EFL is based on the idea that learners' own initiative and effort are involved in the learning process. Learner autonomy. حطها درك روح دير جوجل learner autonomy تخرج في هذه. It's the same thing. When we talk about learners' own initiative راح تحط في learner autonomy. ثم تقريبا السؤال تنجم تردو It's learner. Where is my cat? والله غير هنا behind me يعني بالسيف مريع على الكرسي بخليليش الاسباس. Okay, what's the approach that's best to teaching English Algerian primary school? Well, it's not my domain. بصح ماذا بيك تروح تشوف مثلا the idea of dealing with young learners. ممكن تهضر على وش يسموها هذيك؟ لا نسيتها. Yeah. One of the approaches that uses activity. Yeah, نسيتها. Okay, communicative. When learners are involved in activities and etc., This is one of the because when it comes to young learners, you need to make them active. This is something so important. So yeah, maybe talk about this. Where do we find teachers centeredness and learner centeredness in the teaching method? For example, the teacher, no, in GTM it's teacher centered. صح. There is learner centered approach. Okay. هي على العموم حاول تقسمها بين دائما اقسم مس قاسي اقسم بين traditional approaches. شوف إذا قلنا grammar translation method is teacher centered، إذا قلنا the direct method is a teacher centered، إذا قلنا مثلا هذوك اللي خرجوا هذوك تاع سميهم لي خرجوا وحدين هكذا they're weird methods they're all teacher centered because they rely the silent way for example all teacher centered. كي تروح ل the modern approaches كي تبدا تقول باللي كاين learner centeredness كاين emphasis هنا يدخل مباشرة is learner centered we focus on learners. Okay, I'm starting to get tired. My voice is starting to disappear. Okay, what's the difference between distant and online learning? I don't have, but I think the same, quietly the same. We use the words interchangeably usually. How can discuss question tackling the integration of all auditory skills, listening skills? How to discuss a question tackling the integration of all. هنا تاني ترجع عندك traditional approaches. Traditional approaches عندك غير direct method that's really focused on oral skills. But when it comes to communication, the communicative approaches, we focus on that, but we focus on the idea of communication. ما تنسوش باللي the direct method focus on the idea of oral. يعني كنا نقولوا drills and the students have to speak. بصح كانت ما كانش فيها communication. The students have to repeat. كيما دوك تروح تجيب استاذ تقول له repeat عاود good morning good morning. ما كاش تولي communication if the students or the learner is going to ask questions and answer questions and engage in a what we call constructive communication. Yeah, total physical response. Thank you, Miss Anna. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, okay. Yeah, so I do see that. Okay, I don't have any more questions. Thank you so much because I really got so tired. Can you propose some questions concerning sampling techniques, research methodology? هما شوف sampling techniques باينين. هي برك الواحد وين يخاف مثلا اذا كان يقول لك مثلا which technique goes with what مثلا experimental what approach. هنا خصك تعرف where we should for example كيما دائما نقول مثلا if you are going to use for example purposeful sampling a sample علاش استعملت this why so because in research methodology, everything you do should be accompanied with the question of why. So هنا برك تعرف why هنا مكان. Okay, how does research methodology contribute to didactics? Quite simple. Research methodology is about yielding data or information that is reliable, accurate. In the case of didactics, can be generalized. So this is how. So تعاود تمد باللي we as teachers we need to find approaches and methods, but it's the job of methodology to prove that these methods really work effectively. Literally, I'm so tired. My English is getting lost. I do hope you like this video. I felt that I didn't say much, but I don't know why. But I want to end something. That something really strike me. Uh, Many students, they feel so down. And they said, okay, I don't know how to start. If you're starting doubting yourself from the beginning, why are you even trying? Especially, I'm not talking about PhD, I'm talking about all students. انت بادي لونجلي عامك الاول عامك الزوج وحاس روحك جامي تنجح. Why are you struggling? Why you think this way? خاطر حتى واحد ما بدا ناجح وعندي غير اليوم البارح زعفت من واحد الطلبه يجي يقول لي انا ما نعرفش. قلت له ها تعاود تقول لي كلمه ما نعرفش because I don't like it. كان نعرف نتعلم نطيح النوض كاع ما كناش نعرف كاع ما كانت سبيسياليتي تاعنا but try to write and try to speak it. الحمد لله راه كل شيء لي باج اللي هنا you can use them to really understand how to write. Concerning your writing style, you just need to work hard on your on writing skill. اكتب بزاف وخلاص هذا مكان. I'm going to, of course, what I'm going to do, and دايما نقولها, this page is not only meant to PhD students, it's meant to all university students. So if you want really to help me, I want you to share it to every group you can. There are so many students they don't know about it, and they will be happy if they do, especially if they are going to revise for their exams. So inshallah, you have benefited from this. Inshallah, in the recently, inshallah, soon I'm going to publish another video. So thank you so much. Have a good night. It was really a pleasure talking to you. So goodbye.